Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's a creepy and unexplainable thing that you have seen in broad daylight? Please remember to like, share, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe. This happened in Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada in 1987. A woman was walking up the Kingsway on a sidewalk. A pickup truck drove up onto the sidewalk and knocked her down. The driver calmly got out of the truck, picked her up, threw her in, got back in the truck, and drove off. All the while, she was screaming. I took the truck's license number and phoned the RCMP. I have no idea whatever happened to her. Sometime in the early 90s, let's say like 90 to 92, I was 10 years old or so, at a peak playing with a lot of children. We all heard a loud explosion and looked up. This was the first time I had overheard an actual sonic boom. What we saw I can only describe as a gymnast baton floating through the air silently while slowly rotating, like when a gymnast chucks their baton into the air and it's flipping. It was rather high up in the sky, where planes fly, but it was bigger than a plane. It was silent. The shaft was silver. At the ends were large red geodesic dome-type things, like a dodecaron. Behind it were two F-16s that had scrambled after it. I'm guessing the sonic boom was from the F-16s. The UFO was silent as an owl. All the kids ran to our respective parents and chaos ensued. Imagine a group of screaming 10-year-olds trying to explain to our parents what we just saw. This was the only time I saw something unidentifiable with other people. In 2013, I, 19 female at the time, decided to take up jogging. The city had nice waterfront trails that were usually busy, so one morning before I work, I went out for a run at 6 a.m. Turns out the trail was actually empty at that time of day. I reached a long straight stretch that's isolated near a patch of woods, and there's a man sitting on a lawn chair fishing. I knew the area only had water an inch deep and has never had fish. So he's just sitting there with the lines in the rocks reeling. He's also aggressively glaring at me the whole time I'm approaching and wearing purple medics gloves. Creeped out, I muted my music but kept my headphones in. I was walking at this point, catching my breath. As I passed him, he kept glaring and I got a look at his tackle box. It was full of tools like a hatchet and a hammer, no fishing supplies. I walked by and after a few steps I got a bad feeling and instinctively looked over my shoulder. He had gotten up silently and was right behind me. I ran for it and didn't stop until I reached a busy parking lot. To this day, I wish I had reported it. Husband and I were driving through a four-way traffic light intersection, listening to music, when both of us saw a bright flash like the fill of a car. Then we were suddenly about 4 houses down from the traffic light that was now blinking red from all sides. Music was off. The radio and the phone plugged into the aux were both suddenly turned off, and my car's clock was flashing. Craziest shit. Neither of us could explain it, especially when the light was freshly green as we were going under it, so we definitely didn't accidentally run a red. 2000. Was 10 years old. Was laying on the ground in a parking lot after playing catch with my dad. It was dusk and nearly dark out. We both were looking up and saw what looked like the Iron Giant flying through the sky. It's the only way I can describe it. It looked like a robot flying with its arms in front, flying like Superman. It was dead silent and made no vibrations and even banked to turn just like Superman would. We looked at each other and I asked him what he just saw and he described exactly what I did. Never saw anything like that ever again. I'm sure there's a logical explanation for it, and this was in East Boston, Massachusetts, which is basically in Logan Airport, so likely some kind of plane or something. I grew up across the street from a public park that had a large wooded area. In my early teens, 13 to 14, I would often hike there alone. I was walking the trails one afternoon and became suspicious of a man that was hiking behind me. He was staying back from me, but also staying close enough that he wouldn't lose line of sight. I turned onto a different trail and he turned and continued to follow me on the same trail. Deciding I wanted to lose him, I turned off the trail into the woods. I knew the area well and wasn't worried about getting lost. He immediately turned off the trail and followed me into the underbrush. I took off running and was able to lose him and get back to a busy road that ran alongside of the park. I'm pretty certain I would have been done for had he caught up to me. I used to walk home from middle school through an elementary school property. I would skirt the edge of the school, walking between two temporary learning trailers set up in the back that had been there for a decade. I never saw anyone else outside as the kids were still in school. Very few people walked the same route I did. I was always alone. I only knew there were other people that sometimes walked in because of trash that would accumulate. One day I walked between the trailers and there was a bloody handprint on one of them. I knew it hadn't been there before, and there was no evidence of blood anywhere else. Very creepy. I stayed until it weathered away too. No one ever cleaned it up. This was back in the summer of 2017 when I was 13 years old. At the time, I was living in a trailer deep in the holler. We had a creek in our backyard where there were crawfish, algae eaters, small fish, and snakes. The creek would also have some weird things in it, like a broken meth pipe I once found. One day I found something really strange. It was some kind of weird bloated animal carcass that I couldn't even identify. I don't exactly know what was weird about it, but I'm guessing that it was because it was some strange unidentifiable animal. I was also deep into the woods when I found it, so I reckon that added to the eerie feeling of the situation. Since it's been a long time, I can hardly remember what the carcass looked like, but it had a kind of dark pink color, and it seemed to have no hair or anything on its body. There were no distinguishable features either, like a head or limbs, so I really couldn't make a guess on what the animal was. I reckon this is tame compared to what others have shared, but this is probably the strangest thing I've seen in broad daylight. In the summer of 2019, I went out to a lake a little south of the city I lived in with a few friends. Rode down with two of them. As we're coming back home, it's starting to hit twilight. Like, not dark, but light is fading. As we're coming through the outskirts of the city, through the old downtown of one of the old absorbed communities, there's a woman standing on the corner with a gray trench coat and a large black-brimmed hat. I remember mentioning something to the other two people in the car about how weird it was for someone to be dressed like that in the middle of summer, but oh well. As we went along further, we rolled up into the more suburban area, and there she was again, like 2 miles down the road. Gray trench coat and a big black-brimmed hat. Same side of the street and everything. I brought it up to both friends since, and neither remember it happening, despite the fact we all flipped shit over it too. It was 2014 and I was 19. I was driving with my dad to Walmart and I was kind of a depressed loner, so I didn't have my phone on me. What's the point? No one will text anyway. Same thing with my dad. My mom was asleep. He had left her a note and his daughter was right next to him, right? So we're on our way to Walmart when at the same time we both noticed these giant flaming fireballs in the sky from our distance away. They looked to be the size of minivans. They had flame tails and everything. They were just huge flame balls. They started to do geometric dances, and when they turned, you could see the trail of the flame. There were 5 total. They slowly started to make a spiral shape, and as they did, the flames started to disappear. 5 geometric dance, 4 geometric dance, 3 geometric dance, 2 geometric dance, almost a circle at this point, and then lastly 1. They faded away. No one else on the road saw them or behaved like they did. I don't know if you're joking or not, but I honestly had an encounter very similar to this somewhere between 2017 and 2019. I know it was pre-COVID, but I really don't remember the year. I was taking my partner to work early one morning and we came to a stop sign where we watched 2 people cross the other side of the intersection in a manner that I can only describe as just like the alien in Men in Black. He had a long coat on and a woman was following behind him. His balance and gait were so unnatural that I wanted to take my phone out and record, but as I grabbed my phone I got this crazy, weird, scary feeling that he could be at my car window before I could open my camera app, which would be crazy because I was at the opposite side of the intersection. We watched them cross in like a weird, what the fuck is that, shock, and it was still dark outside, so they kind of just disappeared into the darkness. But it also felt like they really kind of vanished randomly. My partner and I are still together, and every once in a while we bring it up like, yo, you remember that time? What the did we see? She can also confirm that she got a weird, uneasy, hair-raising feeling the whole time we watched. I've been wanting to post about this forever, but since the interaction was less than a minute, I didn't think it was worth a 10-word post, but wow, look, sentences. And no, they weren't junkies or drug addicts. The shit was truly strange. My hair's beginning to stand up on my head just thinking about it again. Weirdest shit I've ever seen in my life. Alright guys, a couple of shoutouts today, so let's get to it. William Verkus. Hello, Rodrigo from Mexico. Or I should say Buenos noches, or Buenos tardes right now. It's noon over here. My wife and I were just in Mexico in July, so for a wedding. It was cool. From Sweet Pea Cab 9072, wishing her husband, Whitebeard Mycology, a very happy birthday on Halloween. Great day to have a birthday. Mine's on the 2nd of November. And to Yagya and Yakin again from Tasnimarin 2013. Hello guys, I hope all is well. And wrapping up, we have the song Summer Glitch from Colin Fitz, one of our listeners. He just put that out on Spotify. If you'd like to go give it a listen. Again, Summer Glitch from Colin Fitz. All right, guys, have a great day, and let me know if you want to hear more. Have a good one. I was with my little guy at the park on a busy evening, really nice neighborhood in LA. There was always an older man who would show up early in the evening and play instruments and blow bubbles for the kids. He's there and kids are gathered around him. I look around to tend to my kid, and when I turn back around, Music Man is wearing a latex pig mask like a Saw movie guy. Just the creepiest mask you've ever seen. He just staring right at me. I grabbed our stuff and left. I was standing on the sidewalk outside my apartment near downtown Atlanta so I could get a signal on my phone while talking to my boyfriend. I lived on the street that separated a good but sort of rundown neighborhood from a rough but friendly neighborhood full of blue-collar families. I stood on the sidewalk talking to my boyfriend who lived in Florida and thought Atlanta was scary and dangerous. Way down the sidewalk. I was standing on maybe 12 blocks away. I could see someone or something moving slowly in my direction. I was having a long, friendly conversation with my boyfriend, just chatting, and as whatever it was got closer to me, I started to first mention it to my boyfriend, and then give updates. Hey, sorry to interrupt. There's something coming my way down the sidewalk. No, I can't talk. It's too far away. It seems like something black. Maybe an inflated hefty bag, but there are like silver flashes. It's barely moving. 5 minutes pass. Okay. It's a little closer. Definitely some black sort of round object. A homemade car or a wagon. And there's a person running around it kneeling. 10 more minutes, 6 blocks away. Yeah, it's still coming. It's really moving slowly. It must be extremely heavy. There's a woman in a white shirt that is like flashing or something. She doesn't seem to have any pants on. 5 more minutes, whispering into the phone. Whoa, okay. It's a huge black metal grill, but it's not just any grill. This is like a professional grill and smoker combo. It's the size of, like a Volkswagen Beetle. Seriously. And it's got a bunch of tools hanging off of it and clanking around. Man, this grill probably costs like $3,000, seriously. It's got teak accents and everything. How is she moving this all by herself? She's so little. Where is she going? The person moving the grill was a teeny tiny model thin young black woman. She was wearing very high, shiny black patent leather stilettos, bad shoes for walking, much less moving a 2-ton grill, and she had on a vintage, beaded, white flapper-type dress that came down to her mid-thigh and threw blinding silver spangles off of it in the afternoon sun. She was hard to look at. She was so sparkly, and was in vivid contrast to the dark metal of her burden. The woman was very smartly dressed, and was obviously on her way to a fancy get-together, to which she had apparently pledged to bring a grill. Her back was to me, and she labored to move the grill a few inches at a time. She had to hold a rope attached to the side of the grill, and she'd face the grill and basically fall backwards down to the ground on her bottom, which would yank the grill toward her ever so slightly. She did this over and over again in the August sun. Another summer afternoon in the ATL. When she got about 10 feet away from me, I, still on my phone, hopped up on a small patch of grass to give her room to pass. Hang on, I said, into the phone. I gotta talk to this lady. The woman and her grill finally came even with me. She was looking down at the ground, concentrating. Man, you sure picked a hot day to tote your grill, I said to the side of her smooth black bob. But I love your dress. The woman looked up at me and graced me with a wide, friendly smile, which was almost obscured by a short, thick beard and mustache. Thank you, baby, she cried. She seemed as delighted to see me as I was her. When I saw her beard, I understood that though this person had great taste in clothing and looked fantastic, this was probably someone who made their living on the street, and who was probably stealing this grill from the Emory grads in the new condos further down the block. Still though, they were working so hard and sticking with it. "I hope you get where you're going," I called. As they bent and heaved and dipped and hauled, a dazzling hirsute inchworm and their cast-iron prey. "You too," they sang out from behind the domed lid. "Ah, Atlanta, how I loved you and your people and places. You fed my soul when it needed feeding. You aren't like this at all today, but I'm so blessed to have known you back then." Happened in the mid to late 90s. Was camping with family at a local state park, and we decided to hike down to an old abandoned cemetery within the park we were camping at. The cemetery was at least 100, if not 150 years old or more. It was just in the middle of the forest, surrounded by a stone wall. About 10 to 20 graves. This park apparently had a few settlements in it prior to being a state park, or even a state for that matter. But nothing is really left except for some old foundations and this cemetery. We started getting weird vibes, and my siblings and I decided we needed to go. It just felt off. As my siblings and I were walking out of the trail, we all started commenting how it felt like we were being watched. I swear to this day that I would see human-shaped shadows in the woods off trail, and every time I would turn to look back, I would see a human-shaped shadow dart across the trail or disappear back into the woods. My siblings claimed they saw the same thing when they would look. We picked up the pace and got out of there as quickly as we could. We spent one more night right at camp, which was a mile or so away from where this cemetery was. None of us got any real sleep that night, and we all decided to just kind of hang by the fire till morning when we packed up and left. When we were 7, Mum took me and my cousin Elle and I over Hounslow Heath for our usual adventures that were common in the summer holidays. Instead of the regular route, we used to love collecting feathers and other natural things that we found to make collages with, or picking fat, juicy blackberries off bushes for a grand to make pies with. Mum took us to one of her old haunts as a child called Paradise. Paradise was thought to have been the location of either an old coaching inn or a powder mill, and was just a very stark, bare, massive open field with skeletal remains of ancient-looking stones and wood buildings. Very old tree stumps were scattered throughout the field. Over the years, Paradise had fallen victim to random attacks of arson and the local council burning the field to keep it from becoming overgrown and unmanageable. So the appearance of Paradise was more desolate and bleak due to the burnt stubbles of grass and charred tree stumps, along with the still strong and slightly sickly smell of smoke in the air, especially when the wind caught up. The obvious differences between the otherwise lush and green area around Paradise and Paradise itself was clear to Elle and I immediately, and we settled out at the same time, the burnt place. I felt uneasy straight away, and looking at Elle, I could tell she did too, although Elle was and still is close with her feelings. When you grow up, you know how they feel about certain things. I was in my wheelchair investigating the ground around me, and Elle was a little distance off. Mum was looking at something else. Suddenly I looked up at me and said, "Shiv, can you hear something?" I was suddenly struck by the deathly silence of the immediate area. Normally the heath was alive with the comforting sounds of birds, insects, and small animals. It was a constant, like a soundtrack to our play. But that day there was not a sound. Nor, come to mention it, was there any evidence of any living thing. In fact, I could remember seeing any animal or birds since we got to Paradise. I said this to Elle, and we both looked at the sky before continuing to investigate the burnt ground. Looking carefully, I came to the awful realization that the ground was scattered with small animal skeleton bones and skulls, charred and dirty, left overrun years of fires. Elle and I looked at each other and said at the same time, "Can we please go now?" Mum looked at us both and laughed. "What's wrong with you two?" We told her about the unearthly silence and the small animal skeletons. Mom just explained that it was only to be expected from a dead area, but she didn't say much about the silence. She just listened and then said, "Okay, let's go back." When you got home, we told our gran about it, and we talked all night about it. Now we're adults, and Elle has got children of her own. They ask us about our childhood, and sometimes we tell them spooky, funny stories, but anytime we both mention paradise, it's always with uneasiness. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon on a bright and sunny California day. I was driving a coworker home after our shift, and we were going to smoke weed at his place. About a block away from his apartment building, an animal of some sort darts in front of my car. It was running too quickly for me to get a good look at it, but this was sadly not my first experience having hit an animal with a vehicle before. A coyote ran in front of my family's car on a trip to Yosemite when I was a child, so I was familiar with the distinct crunch of a car running over an animal. Worried that I've just killed somebody's dog that got loose, I immediately pulled over to the side of the road and started looking around for the poor animal. It wasn't in the street, so I figured it must have kept running off while injured. I looked in the direction that it came from and the direction that I figured it must have continued running, and there was no sign of any animal at all. I inspected my car for damage, and there was nothing. No blood, no fur. It was as if I hadn't hit anything at all. Shaken up, my coworker and I agreed to skip smoking weed that afternoon. His apartment wasn't even a full block away from where it is whatever I hit, so I quickly drop him off and start to go home. While waiting at a red light, I glanced down the street toward where the collision occurred and saw something I cannot explain, nor will I ever forget. It wasn't a dog. It more closely resembled a deer, but it was all wrong. It was massive. Had to be at least 8 feet tall, including its antlers. It was entirely black and unnaturally thin, as if its skin was clinging to its bones. What freaked me out the most was that it was limping. This was definitely what I hit with my car, but how? Never mind the fact that I don't believe in the supernatural. How could I have hit something so huge and not noticed it? How could something so big not leave any trace of damage on my car? The light turned green and I drove forward. I immediately made an illegal U-turn after the intersection. I needed to get a second look at whatever this thing was. But whenever I brought my car back around again, it was gone without a trace, as if it had vanished into thin air. I consider myself a logical and rational person. I'm not religious, nor do I believe in the supernatural, but I have no earthly idea what I hit with my car that day. A year or two after I moved to my current town, very old town, built in the 1800s, I remember driving past one of the abandoned buildings, which had been there for a very long time. It had 2 floors. Something told me to look in the second floor window. When I did, I remember seeing a slightly translucent woman. She had dark hair and was wearing a nice white dress. She looked to be in her early 20s. She was smiling slightly and waved at me. I remember when I saw her that I completely froze up, and it seemed like time slowed down. Remember, this building was abandoned. I remember asking my older brother about it later, who had an interest in urban history and researched a lot about the building in this town. He said that back in the 1900s, there was a family who lived on the second floor of that building, but he was unsure if anyone died up there. I remember it vividly to this day, and it was about 7 years ago now. The building has since been bought and then sold again. The person who bought it went bankrupt. Coincidence? Probably, but who knows? Element. 2 things. One was actually during the night. I was watching TV when I was either in middle school or elementary school, and my mom comes downstairs excitedly telling to come to the living room upstairs. I follow her, and we look out the window where there's a weird circular light in the overcast sky spinning around fast in a circle. Sort of like a spotlight hitting the clouds, but there was no visible direction it was coming from. No visible light beam present. There were no sounds of any aircraft like a heli or was, well, if the light was coming from above the clouds, so we had no idea what was going on. She told me that before she came and got me, the light was splitting into smaller circles and crashing into larger ones as they spun the same circular pattern. Traffic seemed to notice it as well, because it was backed up on our street as if people were observing the light. My cousin, near the neighborhood, called sometime later, saying they saw the same thing and that their power went out. Second thing was around middle school. I was taking a dump, and as I'm looking out my bathroom into the hallway, I see something completely black running past the bathroom toward my older sister's room. It was like a large animal running on all fours or something. After I finished, I asked her if she saw anything, but she did not. I never had any history with hallucinations back then, and to this day, and I still have no idea how to explain what I saw that day.